All right, today we're going to unpack what looks like a radically new playbook for American foreign policy. We're going to explore how a stalled war in Ukraine is causing a huge pivot on Russia, why a very personal, high-stakes deal over Taiwan might actually be on the table, and how a deliberate step back from global aid is creating this power vacuum that China is just rushing to fill. Let's dive right in.
So let's start with a number that is it's almost impossible to wrap your head around. Over 1 million. According to the analysis we're looking at, that's the estimated number of Russian casualties in the war in Ukraine. Just a staggering, almost unthinkable human cost for a conflict that has, for all intents and purposes, ground to a halt.
And you'd think, with that immense loss of life, something would have to give, right? Well, the assessment from the source is incredibly blunt. Putin doesn't care. And that apparent indifference, it's not just some grim detail. It's actually the key to this whole puzzle. It's the reason why the old strategies of diplomacy are getting tossed out the window, and a new, much more aggressive approach is taking their place.
And that brings us to our first big area of focus, this really dramatic pivot in the approach toward Russia. It's a decisive move away from negotiation and straight towards raw pressure.
You see, the analysis we're digging into suggests that President Trump really believed his personal relationship with Putin could get a ceasefire done. He reportedly put some major concessions on the table, like ending sanctions, but Putin just flatly rejected them. Now, for a leader who really prides himself on being a deal-maker, this wasn't just some policy failure, it was a personal slight, and that has apparently prompted a huge strategic rethink.
So the old approach, offering the carrot of sanctions relief and personal diplomacy, it just didn't work. So now the stick is coming out. And listen, this isn't some small adjustment. We're talking about giving Ukraine advanced extended-range missiles and privately leaning on countries like Hungary, Turkey, and even India to stop buying Russian oil. It's a really fundamental shift from trying to persuade to just plain coercion.
Okay, so this new super transactional approach isn't just for Russia. We're seeing a really similar playbook starting to emerge in the relationship with China over Taiwan. But here, it seems to be less about force and more about a very specific, high-stakes deal between two leaders.
But first, a quick geography lesson, because this is absolutely vital to understanding the stakes here. A lot of Americans might think of Taiwan as just one island, but you've got these islands, Kinmen and Matsu, that are literally right on China's doorstep. They are incredibly vulnerable and represent a potential flashpoint that the U.S. would find almost impossible to defend. This really tense reality is what's setting the stage for the deal-making. So, instead of things escalating toward a conflict, the analysis suggests we could be looking at a deal. But this isn't your classic diplomatic agreement. No, this is a direct trade based on what each leader personally wants. Trump is reportedly looking for Xi's blessing to install his own people at a major media outlet to get more control over the narrative. And what does Xi want in return? A public statement from Trump opposing Taiwanese independence, a huge political win for him. It is a pure transaction based on personal priorities. Now, this transactional America First theme doesn't just stop with military or diplomatic strategy. It actually extends to America's long-held role as a global benefactor, creating what the source describes as a major and very intentional vacuum in international aid.
And that's a massive question with truly enormous consequences. I mean, for decades, the United States has been the undisputed leader in funding everything from global health crises like malaria and HIV/AIDS to literally feeding starving people. We're talking billions of dollars and millions of lives saved every single year. This has been a cornerstone of American soft power, but that could all be about to change. The source we're looking at here indicates a really profound philosophical shift. The new thinking is that these global responsibilities just aren't a priority anymore. The idea is that other countries, well, they need to pay for themselves and make their own way. This is a deliberate withdrawal from a role the U.S. has played for generations, and it's a move that's going to have massive ripple effects all over the world.
You know what they say, nature abhors a vacuum. Well, so does geopolitics. As the United States deliberately steps back from its global commitments, another world power is strategically and frankly eagerly stepping forward to fill that void. And you can see exactly how this is playing out in real time. When the U.S. stops paying some of its dues to the United Nations, China steps in and pays its own, making itself look like the more accountable global partner. When the U.S. cuts back on visas for skilled people, China immediately signals that it's going to make it easier for talented people to come there. For every single void the U.S. creates, China sees a golden opportunity to expand its influence. So, we've looked at Russia, China, and global aid.
What does it all mean when you connect the dots? What's the larger pattern that's emerging from these policy shifts that seem on the surface to be separate?
So, here's the crucial point. A really consistent playbook is starting to take shape. It's a foreign policy that is defined by transactionalism over ideology, where the personal goals of leaders can actually outweigh traditional alliances. It involves a very conscious withdrawal from global responsibilities, which in turn creates these strategic openings for rivals like China. This is a radical departure from the post-World War II consensus, and it's a shift that could totally redefine the future of global cooperation.
And all of this leaves us with a final, really critical question. Is this just a temporary shift, or are we witnessing the dawn of a new, permanent era in American foreign policy? An era where the U.S. leads not through alliances and aid, but through hard-nosed bilateral deals. An era where America first might just end up meaning America alone. And that's the provocative thought this analysis leaves us with.